Good morning, mathematicians. It is Tuesday of week 36, our final week in this illustrative math fifth grade journey. So let's jump in and get started. Scoop Dog bought 18 giant tubs of his favorite ice cream flavor for $144. He wants to know the cost of 8 tubs of ice cream. He wants to know how much does each tub cost. Now, notice I underlined these in two different colors because you're actually needing to answer two different questions. The first question is, how much does 6 tubs of ice cream cost? And the second is, how much does each of the tubs cost? We actually are needing to answer both of those questions. So I'm going to get started with this idea of how much does each tub cost first, because I'm going to use my answer to this to get my answer to the 8 tub conundrum. So let's get started here. Well, 18. I certainly can't do 10 groups of 18 because I don't have $180, right? But one that I like to use here is 18 times 5 because when I think about 10 groups of 5, that's 50, right? And then those extra 8 groups of 5 is 40 more. So even with mental math, I know that that would use up $90, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say 5 tubs, right, of that ice cream. And now 5 times 18, that accounted for $90 of that sale. Okay. Now that is, of course, giving us a difference of 54, which is not enough to do a 5 again. I don't have 90. But I can go ahead and take a look here and think to myself, what would be a reasonable estimate? I could try maybe 18 times, maybe 18 times 3. Let's see if that gets us close to 54 without going over. 8 times 3 is 24. Here's my 4. Carry my 2. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2 is 5. That's exactly right. So I can do 3 groups of 18 and I will use up all 54 with no remainder. So I know that my answer when I join this together is 8. So what does that tell me? If he spent $144 on 18 tubs of ice cream, that tells us that each tub cost $8. So I'm going to write that down below. Each tub equals, and I'm going to write $8, right? But now we need to go back to the question that I underlined in blue. How much would 8 tubs be? So I'm going to write now that 8 tubs would equal how much money? Well, that would be 8 times 8. And 8 times 8 is 64. So we actually had two questions. Remember, good mathematicians are also those critical readers, reading carefully. We had two questions to answer, and now we have done just that. Okay, our next conundrum is Puget Keys gaming chair weighs 13 and 1/4 pounds. He removes 4 and 7/8 pounds of seat cushions. How much does the chair weigh now? So we are going to be subtracting here, right? I don't have a common denominator, but I see an easy way to get to common denominators is to keep this one the same because can't I create an equivalent fraction here and make this 1/4 be something over 8? Well, I know to do that, I'm going to multiply the bottom by 2. So I'm also going to multiply the top by 2 as well. 8 times 2, or excuse me, 4 times 2 gives me 8, and 1 times 2 gives me 2, right? So now I have an equivalent fraction here. I know that 13 and 1/4 equals the same thing as 13 and 2/8. But now I can subtract. Now, the reason this question is so important for us to review today is not so that we can practice reading difficult names. No, it is so that we can practice what do we do in this moment? I know that if I have 2/8, I can't lose 7/8, but I know I can borrow from this, right? We can borrow in fractions. If I cross off my 13 and make it one less, this now is a 12, right? But I have a whole floating around and need to give it right here to this fraction. You do not just always give it a 10 like we do in whole numbers and in decimals. No, instead, we give the numerator whatever's in the denominator because that's like giving it 8 out of 8, which is giving it a whole. So our numerator is going to become a 10. I'm going to rewrite this in red just to make it a little easier for you to see. Now I have 10 eighths minus 7 eighths, and that I can do. So if I have 10 eighths and I lose 7 eighths, I have a difference of 3 eighths. And I'm no longer looking at 13 here, I'm looking at 12, right? Well, 12 minus 4 does give me a difference of 8. So my answer here is, how much does the chair weigh? The chair weighs 8 and 3/8. And what was that unit measure? It was pounds. So we have 8 and 3/8 pounds. Our next question is, solve the following using the distributive property, or not distributive, associative property. We even have an example here, but we know how to do this. We know that 3 times 7 gives us 21. And how many zeros were outside? Those basic facts. There was 1 zero. Let's do the same thing down below. We have 9 times 9 gives us 81. And how many zeros did we have outside the basic fact? Just 1. So we have 820. Now I have 4 times 5, which gives me 20. And how many zeros do I need to add? I need to add 2. I have a difference, or I have a product of 2,000. Now I'm looking at 8 times 8, which is 64. And how many zeros do I have outside that basic fact? Well, we have 1, 2, 3. Let's add those 1, 2, 3. We have 64,000. Now we have 1 times 4 is 4, but there's a lot of zeros. There's 3 extra zeros over here. There's 2 extra zeros over here. That gives us 5 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, comma. We have our answer of 400,000. Now let's go ahead to this. What is 581 and 297 thousandths? Rounded to the nearest. Our first one is hundred, not hundred, hundred. So we're asking ourselves, this is the hundredth place. So is this number closer to being 500 or 600? Which one is it closer to? Well, it's definitely closer to being 600, right? We can think about that digit afterwards, that 8. Of course, it's going to bump that 5 up to a 6. And this is closer on a number line to being 600 than it is to being 500, okay? Now, I don't want us to get confused, so I'm going to make sure I put my final answer there in red. We're going to do the same thing with the idea of 10. Here I have an 8 in the 10 place. So I'm asking myself, is this closer to being 580 or is this close to being 590, right? Well, what's in the ones place? That's going to tell the story. Is the 1 enough to bump the 8 up? It is not. So my answer is going to be this. My final answer is 580. Let's do the same thing, but with the ones place. We ask ourselves, what's in the ones place? It's a 1. So is this closer to being 581 or 582? Well, the tenths place is a 2. 2 does not have enough power to bump this up, so it's going to stay the same. When we round it to the nearest 1, it's going to be 581. Now let's go ahead and take a look. Notice these, number 4, number 5, are decimal place values. When I round to the nearest 10th place, which place value is the 10th place? My place value that is the 10th is the 2. So everything after that is going to get crossed off. But only before I do that, I'm going to zero in on this neighbor number. And I'm going to ask myself, does 9 have enough power to round it up? And it certainly does. So I'm going to have my 5, my 8, my 1, but I'm going to put a 3 in the tenths place. Now let's think about the hundredths. In the hundredths place, I have a 9. So everything behind it is going to get cut off. But before I do that, I take a look at this. This 7. Does 7 have enough power to round up? It certainly does. When this 9 rounds up, it actually becomes, instead of 29, it becomes 30. So here I will have an answer of 581 and 30 hundredths. We are so close. We are almost there. One more question about Grillsmith. This says Grillsmith bought $352.63 worth of veggies. and $141.28 worth of spices for his barbecue. He also spent $227.82 to make his fresh mint of Bel Air drink. How much did Grill spend on his feast in total? So we got veggies, we've got spices, we have got a special beverage. Interesting that there aren't actually any hamburgers or anything like that to season with those spices. But remember, math problems are sometimes strange. We don't want to get lost in the details. Instead, we want to cut in to what is it asking us to do? It's asking us to total these. So we're treating it almost like a running record. It's like we're creating a receipt for him. Notice how my numbers are so nicely lined up that I'm keeping it nice and tidy. I'm not going to make little mistakes just because I'm doing messy work, right? Well, I see 8 plus 2 is 10, plus 3 more is 13. Here's my 3 in the penny position in the hundredths place, and I'm going to carry a 1. Now I have again 8 plus 2 makes a 10, and then 6 plus 1, that brings me to 17. Here's my 7 in the dime position or the tens place, and I'm going to carry a 1 to the ones place. Now I have 7 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1, which is 11. So here's my 1 and a decimal, and I'm going to carry a 1, right? Now I'm taking a look here. I have 6 plus 4, or excuse me, 2 plus 4 is a 6, plus 5 is an 11, plus 1 more is a 12. Here's my 2, carry a 1. And now I have 3 plus 1 plus 2. I'm looking at a 7. So my answer to this question, how much money did he spend on his feast in total? He spent $721.73. Boys and girls, that finishes out our